Alrighty. Well, I have to apologize to Matt. He's standing there. He knows who I am now. He was running around wondering where Heather Darby was, and I'm not always fashionably late, but I have to say I was out trying to rebuild the food system right up till the very last moment that I had to get in my big truck and drive here to give this presentation to you. So I have to say, being a part of the, I guess, food movement, I don't know what you even call it. It's just sort of what I do, too, along with the rest of you. I don't really think about it that much day to day because it's what I do every day. And I absolutely love it, but I will say, if you are going to be a part of this revolutions can be tiring. And they take a lot of energy and motivation, and sometimes they drag you down. But most of the time, speaking just personally, is that I couldn't, I don't know. I have to say that it's what drives me every single waking moment of my day. It is my hobby. So we need more people that think of this revolution as their hobby, less so than a job, to make all this happen. So what I'm going to do today is just talk about one example that I've been involved in of rebuilding a grain economy or the grain aspect of the food system or whatever you might want to call it, and what we're doing here in Vermont to do this. And then also this same movement is happening across New England and actually in other parts across the United States too. So we have a lot of partners involved with this project. Let's see if I can get this one right. So why are we doing this? Why do it if nobody really wants it? Well, it's obvious that at least a couple hundred of us do, or else we wouldn't be sitting here right now, but we need a few more than 200 people to make this thing go. And I don't think there's many farmers here. I mean, I'm a farmer. I own it. There we go, own and operate a farm. But you need some critical people to actually want this, not just us. Okay? There's lots of players in changing a food system. And one of the major players, obviously, are the farmers. And in a grain system, like the one that I'm working in, why would the farmers want to do this? Farmers in Vermont are already doing a lot of things. Why would they even want to start growing grains? And of course, there's lots of great reasons, which is why it's happening, because farmers are interested in doing this. And I just listed a few, not that we need to go through them, but there's lots of opportunities for our farmers and grains beyond just feeding us, to be honest. So besides the farmers, who else do we need? Well, we need the end user. Whether it's a baker or a brewer, and no, the candlestick maker's not in there, is it? A baker, a brewer. And consumers, they have to want to buy grain. Why would a farmer grow it if nobody's going to buy it? Okay? There are farmers all over the United States that want to do something different, okay, to get out of maybe that industrial ag mode. But there's not a lot of people like there are in our little area here that want to buy those local products. Okay, this is a special relationship. So in order for the farmers to do this, there's got to be someone on the other side that wants it. And of course, from a consumer's perspective or the end user's perspective, there's a lot of reasons why they want to buy local grains. And again, the consumers, besides the other end users, still, many reasons why they're lining up to get local grains. So there's lots of players to make this even get started. Okay? So one thing, when I got involved with local grains, actually I didn't do this first. I'm actually glad I didn't, because if I would have, I never would have done it. Where have we been? What's already been done? Was this tried before? And actually, you know, Vermont and New England, we grew grains, a lot of grains in the past, mostly because we had to. You know, we couldn't import those grains from Montana or Kansas. We had to grow our own grains. And interestingly, just in Vermont, there were 40,000 acres of wheat grown here at its peak in 1840. All right? And that's half of the corn acres that we have today in Vermont. So you can picture what it would look like if this was true today. So we do have a history of wheat and grains. We have a famed wheat breeder that was from Vermont, the father of wheat breeding, Cyrus Pringle. Hardly anybody knows that. They know Cyrus Pringle because there's an herbarium named after him here at the university, but most people do not know that he was a famed plant breeder, and he developed one of the most famous varieties of wheat called Defiance that has been bred into many, many of the modern day wheats today. So we've got quite a history of grain growing here. But after 1840, down the tube, okay? Today, maybe a couple thousand acres in Vermont, and when I started working on this project, I think there were 200 acres, okay? So why did it leave? Well, Erie Canal, mostly, okay, changes. There weren't a lot of people living west of the Mississippi, okay? So once they found better places to grow crops, drier places in particular, production started to move out west. There were other reasons, diseases, insects. I read in an old newspaper article up in Orleans County that said you can only get a favorable crop 1 out of every 5 years. So I'm glad I didn't read this before I started. Probably would have said, forget it, okay? But I didn't. And I thought this was interesting. I found this in the report of the Vermont Board of Agriculture from 1878, and this is exactly what we said to ourselves when things were getting rolling. This was a quote out of the book. We often hear the expression, "It does not pay to raise grain in Vermont." And on account of its prevalence, many men abandon its cultivation without ever having made the test as to whether it paid or not. So, our story begins. Because the same thing happened a number of years ago here. How can we say it doesn't pay? How can we say that we can't do it if we don't try? All right? So the first thing we had to do was, and again, here we go again. This is not where I started. I'm trying to tell you where to start so you don't make the same mistakes we did, set yourself back a few years. You need to understand each other's needs, okay? I'm an agronomist. I like soil and crops. My needs are to be in the field, okay? But in this case, I was just dealing with the farmer's needs. Yield, mostly, okay? Can we grow grain here? Yep. And who did we forget to ask? The bakers, the brewers, the consumers. What do you need? We didn't ask them. But once we did, we really got on a fast track to really growing better and more high-quality grains. So we have to work together, okay? We can't work independently of each other. That's a system, right? You work together. This is a system. There's more than just one. There's no I in team. Is that what it is? That's what my soccer coach used to tell me. All right, so you have to understand each other's needs, and then you have to figure out how you're going to meet everybody's needs. Not always possible, but then there comes that compromise, okay? We're not always going to be able to do or produce the grain that Kansas does. But we're going to produce some really good grain, and can the bakers use it? And can they learn to use what we produce? Just as an example. Okay, so once we all figured out what we all wanted and needed, and everybody sort of set a couple of their egos aside and all these things that happen, we were able to really start rolling. Okay, it was time to start obtaining and developing the information that we needed to move the grain system forward. And there were a lot of needs, let me tell you that, okay? I specifically remember, and I probably shouldn't say any names, Randy George, saying, I will never use all Vermont wheat because every time I make a loaf of bread with it, I could sell it as a doorstop, okay? And if anybody's brought Cyrus Pringle's bread at City Market or Healthy Living, it's all Vermont wheat, all right? So working together, that's what we accomplished. Working alone, we had doorstops, okay? All right, so we developed the information, and this is all over the board. My role, of course, is on the agronomic end. We didn't even know what the best varieties were to grow in Vermont to bake bread or malt for beer or whatever it might be, and here we are. This is before we were able to even get any research equipment. Do you feel bad for us? One little seed at a time, but we did it. That's how we got started and started to gain support for our research and started to raise money to produce more, okay? Opened a grain quality testing lab in Vermont that now serves pretty much, well, everybody. We get samples from all over the place. A young boy, 13 years old, from Indiana, doing a school project, joined the Northern Grain Growers Association so he could send his samples in to our lab at a discounted price, okay? So we're testing wheat quality because that's the kind of information we needed to obtain to move forward, all right? So you're getting the picture here. There is sort of a strategy. Learn from other models. We don't always have to reinvent the wheel, and actually it's fun to go on all these trips. We got to go to Denmark. That was a good time. We went up to Quebec. We went all over the place visiting other small grain systems. And we had a fabulous time, and we learned a ton. And we're able to bring that back to Vermont. And I will say there have been many farmers that have adopted new practices, bakers that have came up with new recipes, all types of things from these trips, okay? We need to learn from the other models. All right, and now, how I feel is that we're making our own history, okay? We're not just looking back at history, but now we're making our own. And maybe someday, 200 years from now, somebody will stand up here and show my decrepit little picture of me planting my wheat, saying, look what they did in 2010. But we're making our own history. And our farmers are innovators, and they're leading the way, okay? This is just an example of farmers realizing that the varieties available to them don't quite meet their needs. Okay, most of the varieties come from other parts of this country that aren't like Vermont climates. So what are we doing? We're developing our own varieties. Why not? Why not do that? And there's a picture of Seth Johnson from Glover, Vermont, learning how to breed wheat in Washington State. Okay? And then we're bringing that back, teaching other farmers. There's Jack and I. We were terrible at it. Didn't matter. We still tried. And now we're almost ready to release our first variety that is Champlain, Cyrus Pringle, by A.C. Berry. So we've got our Vermont history crossed with a modern day, and we haven't come up with a name, but we're thinking Pringle's Revenge. All right. So working together with all the players that need to be a part of this food system, no matter what aspect of it, is critical. Okay? We can't do this on our own. I can't do it on my own. The farmers can't do it on their own. So teamwork is necessary. And when you work together, I'll tell you what, you can accomplish a lot. And it does help you get out of bed in the morning. It helps you keep moving. And it helps this whole train move forward. And lastly, we have to remember that now we're becoming that model that people want to come and visit and learn from us. And it's really important that we all take the time to share what we've learned with others at workshops and field days and conferences like this, so that maybe someone else has a little bit less of a steep hill upward. And lastly, as you're working through this, there are the tough times and there are the great times, but you have to remember to stop and take those moments to celebrate. Even the littlest milestones. And for me, I like working with the bread folks. I kind of like the beer folks a little bit better, but but you need to remember to celebrate as you make even the smallest movements in the food system. And that's it. Thank you.